This is the Speak For Yourself podcast featuring the best of Colin Cowherd and Jason Whitlock. I'm your host, Jason McIntyre. It's hump day, almost to the Final Four, folks. Let's get into it. Looks like we've got a timetable for the Cowboys on Tony Romo. And Whitlock thinks Jerry Jones is standing in the way of Romo's future. But it's the right move for Dallas. Co-host of The Herd with Colin Cowherd, Christine Leahy stops by to talk a little bit about her encounter with Lonzo and LaVar Ball earlier today. Cowherd tells you he's going to keep it 100 and doesn't buy that Kevin Durant's injury could be a blessing for the Warriors heading into the playoffs. Plus, we talk a little bit about Joe Mixon, mix in a little Kentucky basketball. Ready for Speak For Yourself? Cowherd and Whitlock, take it away.
Welcome to the show. Colin thinks LaVar Ball needs to scale back on the publicity.
And Jason thinks there's no way Jerry Jones and Tony Romo are still on good terms. We are. Speak For Yourself starts right now on a loaded show today.
Think I need to scale back on the ice cream, Colin?
No, I'm okay with you. I don't want you to get too thin on me. That's part of your appeal.
All right, hello and welcome. We're joined today by Hall of Famer Cris Carter and Super Bowl champ Eric Davis. Let's start at the NFL owners meeting in Phoenix, where Jerry Jones weighed in on the never-ending saga over Tony Romo's future, telling the money-winning quarterbacks Albert Breer that he would decide Romo's fate, quote, before training camp. Jerry also addressed how the situation has affected his relationship with Romo.
Oh, yes, we're on great terms, but I certainly don't want to necessarily represent anything as to how he feels, but I feel good about how we're doing. We're being the Cowboys, me, Tony. I feel very good about it.
All right, Colin, do you buy that Jerry and Romo are on great terms?
No, I've always had a saying, I put it in my books, two things make smart men stupid: women and sports. One thing ruins, at least briefly, a friendship: money. They're on a friendship sabbatical. You can have a great friend. You open up a car wash, a restaurant together. You go on a friendship sabbatical. You start writing checks. I'm doing more of the work. And I just think this is the reality with men. You know, genders are viewed sometimes differently. Men often view themselves on professional success.
Yep.
We're often viewed on that. And right now, Jerry's career is ending. Jerry Jones' career in business, he's getting older. This is their last deal together, and there's a little friendship sabbatical.
Well, let's say this. I like where Jerry's at. He's finally in a real place. The only thing that matters is the Dallas Cowboys. If I can get something for Tony Romo, trade, we'll get rid of it. Until then, I'm not worried about Tony Romo. I'm doing what's best for the Cowboys. And if I can keep him on my roster all the way through training camp, all the way through the damn regular season, I'll do it if it's best for the Cowboys. Jerry's in a real place. Are they on great terms? Probably not, but Jerry's on good terms.
And I'm on the same page with you as far as Jerry. The reason why you have my hat on today. I wore that hat yesterday. You need to ask me, come in my dress room, ask me to wear my hat.
This is not. It looks like your hat, but it's not.
But I'm with you. And this is where we should have been during the season, after the season. He shouldn't have been doing those interviews as if he was going to let. He led him on, and he led the public on to believe that he would be released immediately or he would do something to accommodate Tony Romo, where the most important thing is, how do I build my team? How do I add that extra piece? If it's a 6th-round pick, if it's a conditional pick, those things would help out the Dallas Cowboys. And as Coach Mangini said, he was the first person on this that I would keep him on the roster as long as possible, and even have him on the roster in the 2017 season. So I'm with you.
Second person on it.
Because there's no benefit to them besides a small cap relief.
Well, you know the way I view this, the way I used to view teams when we were in the NFC West, and we were really good with the Niners, and we were playing like the Falcons and the Rams, who weren't good, and they would always say, well, it's a rivalry game. No, it's not really a rivalry if I beat you every time. This right here, when you're talking about the relationship is great, yeah, the relationship is great, because Romo is not going to do anything to let you know that he's upset. Why? Because Romo, number one, he's under contract, and he may be there the whole year, and I think they should keep him there. That's number one. But number two, you talk about Romo getting to the end. Romo wants to be recognized, not remembered, as one of the greatest quarterbacks. The memories are already there. He already has ingrained into the Cowboys fans that he is a good quarterback. He's made great plays in that uniform. But Cris Carter will be recognized as a great ball player forever because of that gold jacket, future generations will say and talk about this guy and tell their memories. Romo wants to be in that ring. He's not going to do. But hold up. The guy who loves him, who's saying we're in a great relationship, there's one person who controls that ring of honor. And he has the opportunity to be put in there because of that relationship. He wants to be recognized, not remembered. He wants people to walk into there years later saying, you know that, you see that number 9? Let me tell you what he used to be able to do. He's not going to screw it up.
He wants to play next year and not just be in the ring. In Tony's mind, I can see if I could somehow win a Super Bowl, I could get that gold jacket possibly. I could be in the conversation for that. And so in his mind, Jerry is standing in the way of his career moving forward. Tony Romo clearly doesn't want to be here until training camp. He wants to be someplace else where he can compete for the starting job. And so, no, they're not on great terms, but I'm right there with Jerry Jones. He's doing what's right for the Cowboys.
They've already told him you're not going to compete for the starting job. When Jason Garrett came out and said that we don't believe his body...
someplace else he wants to...
that's the thing about it. They view him as a backup,
yeah.
And he knows that. So you think he's happy there? No, the relationship is not on solid grounds, but he's not going to do anything to jeopardize it.
Now, when you own a professional sports team, I've never been a player, but I would be cynical from the first day I arrived at my first camp. Like this whole thing about Jerry and Tony are close. I'm not dumb. Tom Brady has said on multiple occasions, the minute I can't play, I'm out. And he's given Kraft a handful of rings. So, sometimes I think players should be a little more cynical. It's almost like Tony fell in love.
Let me just tell you this. I think that's a real thing about the relationship. And I'll say this. Jerry Richardson, owner of the Panthers, he and I are friends. But as you say, when it comes to the business and it's time to move on, he's going to move on. But no, he even said afterwards that one of the most difficult things was letting players go, and he got close to us, and he said he'll never do it again.
I want to go back to your point, though, about men and how we operate amongst each other. And then you three guys as dads. Jerry has positioned himself as Tony's adopted father. You don't always get along with your son because you're the father. I gave you $120 million. I'm the reason you're living in that mansion and got this great life. I paid the cost to be the boss.
Owners overwhelmingly, their worldview of players is, I made you rich.
Yes.
Players is, I'm making you richer. So the worldview from an owner is different than a player. All right, welcome back now. Joined by longtime NBA vet. Met him for the first time. Loved him when he was a member of my Sonics, Olden Polynice, and my co-host on The Herd, Christine Leahy. Let's move to Lonzo Ball. Yep, you've heard in the show today, The Herd. And naturally, his outspoken dad, LaVar, was right by his side. LaVar has spent the last month making, over-the-top, outrageous claims to pretty much any media outlet that would listen to him. And I asked Lonzo about his dad's behavior. Are you concerned a little that it may turn off just one general manager, that may drop you from 3rd to 5th?
No,
That's a lot of money.
I'm not concerned. No.
I would submit to you that you should scale back a little on the PR stuff. Couldn't you scale back a little?
I don't need you to defend me. You ain't paying me a dime, so who cares what you say?
What if your sons are not as gifted as Lonzo?
Who cares if they're not as gifted?
But you're putting enormous pressure on potentially less gifted kids.
Here's the thing. All my boys understand what I feel about pressure, and they understand what pressure is. And it has nothing to do with playing this sport.
All right, Jason. LaVar's antics hurting his son.
I thought today it really crystallized for me. Yeah, he's having an impact. He emasculated his son on national television today. His son looks like a robot, and his father looks like the total man in the family. And his son is about to go off to some NBA franchise and be surrounded by grown men. And it seems like he's just daddy's little boy, a little robot who's completely controlled by his father. I think I'm out on LaVar Ball. I think he's a problem for this kid, his shtick. He's talking about a reality TV show and all that. This ain't about his sons. This is about LaVar Ball. He needs to get out of the way and let his sons live their lives.
My bigger concern isn't Lonzo, because I think talent tends to kind of transcend baggage. Like, if you're really gifted, you just kind of work, it just powers through stuff. but I don't think his other sons are as gifted. I mean, what are the chances that his sons are all as good as Lonzo? Probably not. So I don't worry about Lonzo because he's moving on now. He's taking the interstate off the college. You know, he's taking the exit off the interstate. But I worry about his other sons who don't have the talent to overcome this umbrella of LaVar.
That proves a point right there. All three sons, you have kids. How rare is it that all three kids want to do the exact same thing? They're being forced to do it. They're being told, you will start basketball at age 6, like Lonzo told us. And whenever you asked him a question, I think he said, what, 5 words? And he looks terrified whenever he's talking. I asked, have you ever had a disagreement with your father? And he said no. And everyone at this table, we know you at one point or another disagree with your parent unless you're afraid to disagree with your parent. And what he saw to me looks like he's terrified to go against anything his father says.
I asked my mother for chocolate breast milk. I started disagreeing better.
Everyone does. And it doesn't mean you have to be disrespectful to your parent. He looks genuinely afraid.
Well, I think, and that's a very good point you're making, and we've had players in the past. We've had, you know, 3 brothers, the Hamilton brothers, one of his teammates. You know, Jordan played in the NBA. You know, Isaac's over at UCLA, and Daniel was at UConn. So we've had 3 sets of brothers grow up playing basketball. But good point you made, they weren't robots. They weren't being, okay, at 6 years old, or we're going to make you an NBA player. And I think that's what he's doing. And we've had the crazy parents in the past. We had Todd Marinovich's dad, who almost had him commit suicide. So it's just that he's over the top. Like I've been saying, he's the Kardashians of the basketball world right now. And to me, that's unfair to his son. We can't appreciate Lonzo's game right now.
I saw you on Colin's show. I'm sorry to interrupt. I think he's taken the dog out of his son, too, because he's all dog, and now his son has none of it.
But you made the great point. He emasculated him. And he's just sitting there, yes, no, I don't disagree. Come on, be your own person, because at the end of the day, what's going to happen is he's going to suffer later on. When one of those hot chicks come and get him, he's not going to know what to do. Perfect example, Dwight Howard. Dwight Howard grew up with a preacher father, okay? So he was kind of like closed in on a lot of things. He gets out into the real world.
Got as many babies as Antonio Cromartie.
It's also
by every stripper from here to Atlanta.
I don't think LaVar would let him do that. I honestly think LaVar will have to approve of any girl that comes into his life. But it's also telling that Lonzo said he wants to stay close to home, that he wants to play for the Lakers. Good job. Great if you want to play for the Lakers. I understand that. But it said it's close to home. He doesn't want to leave his father, doesn't want to leave that nest. And that's not going to go over well when you're surrounded by grown men playing in the NBA.
Of course. Is he going to travel on the road with him?
Right.
You know?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things about the NBA, it's really you call it the dog. It's physical. And we've seen with some players that you push everybody in this league, some don't push back. What I wonder is if you're right that he's emasculated his son, does it affect his basketball? Like against the Kentucky Wildcats, physical guard play. Yeah. Against Arizona, the more they saw him, 24 points, 10 points, 8 points. I wonder if the dad's dominating personality affects him as a player.
It does. He's saying it doesn't, but it does. It's going to take its toll on this kid, especially now when you're going up against the grown men. Now it's about money. That's it.
You're fighting for money.
Of course. And these guys, they're hungry too. They're more hungry than you are. You grew up in Chino Hills, you kicking it back. You're not really hungry. You're not hungry like Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox. You don't know what being hungry is really like. You know, the same comment he made about LeBron James can be said about his kids, you know? They're living that lifestyle, you know, where...
They're driving fancy cars.
Yeah, they're not on welfare.
No Miss Meals. No Miss Meals. Hey, Christine, I got an analogy that you'll appreciate and Colin won't. Okay. I screwed this up last week. B. Diddy, that's what I'm calling LaVar Ball. Okay. He is Puff Daddy. B. Diddy, they had the No Way Out album. This is B. Diddy and the family. LaVar Ball, he's Puff Daddy. All in the videos. He is the Puff Daddy of basketball. Anyway, that's my analogy. All right.
I think you made such a good point, though, about the Hamilton family. I know all the Hamilton brothers, and I know their parents, and they encourage their kids to just speak their minds, and they all genuinely love basketball, and this looks like it couldn't be anywhere opposite.
Let's move to the team with the NBA's best record, Golden State. Steph Curry led the Warriors to a win over the Rockets last night, and today Golden State said Kevin Durant could return before the end of the regular season. But the Warriors are now 10-5 since Durant went down, and Curry is playing as well as he has all year. Colin, was Durant's injury a blessing in disguise?
This is ridiculous.
Why?
I read this question. We have lost our minds. So Kevin Durant's played 26,000 minutes. If I said to you, hey, listen, he's going to get really hurt, it's great for the team. This team's dynasty continues if for the next 3 years Durant plays 75 games, right?
Yep.
Kevin Durant got hurt. It's his, third injury. The older guys get in this league, injuries get worse. You can bump knees as a rookie, you're back the next half. You bump it when you're Steve Nash in your last year, you're on the IR for a month.
True.
Kevin Durant getting hurt is never good news ever for a team. I don't even care if for a week they play well without.
All right, how about this, Christine? Is it good news for Steph Curry?
Let's
throw the team
It is.
out.
And here's the thing. I actually do think it's a blessing in disguise, but hear me out because there's a flip side to it. Steph has found his groove again. He's shooting 43%. He was 39% before the 8-game win streak, right? He needed to get his shot back, get out of that funk, and we're seeing that happen. And by the way, Kevin Durant, he's not hiding. He's on the bench. He's supporting his teammates the entire way. And one of the reasons that we love the Warriors is because they're unselfish. They're willing to pass the ball. They're third in the league with assists per game. So now you add Kevin Durant back to the mix, now that Steph, everybody else has kind of found their groove, and they're going to start all elevating together.
It was a blessing for Macau and Matt Barnes. That's pretty much it. To your point, it did help Steph Curry a little bit because once they got over the initial shock of, oh, my God, he's hurt, then they realized, okay, it's not, season ending, so they got back to winning basketball. But Matt Barnes and Macau were the two guys I think that benefited the most because it allowed them to get extensive minutes to play and get comfortable. And that's where it's going to help them. Him coming back, he's going to flow right back into it, I believe.
If you look at the stats, to your point, Olden, they have been really good. Now, when Durant gets hurt, you think offense could struggle. But the Warriors can score. They have the two best shooters in the league in Clay and Steph. But if you look at their defensive stats when Kevin Durant left, they're pretty remarkable. Field goal percentages, steals, blocks, first, second, and third in the league. So to your point, bench guys got minutes, guys who were pretty good defensive players. Everybody, when Kevin left, had to go, okay, because defense about effort. You could kind of coast when you've got Steph and Clay and Durant and you can kind of coast.
So their defense improved without Durant.
Their defense intensity improved. Their defense intensity improved. Their stats improved. But you're never better.
So it did help the team.
But a lot of other things happen within that team, too. There's a lot of things that happen within the Warriors. All of a sudden, internal stuff started coming out. And I think that was because of the injury. They were freaking out. Iguodala making the statements he made, a year ago, 2 years ago, he wasn't making those kind of statements publicly. And I think that made a difference as well.
It helped the team defensively, so it helped the team.
That's the weakest win of an argument.
All right, welcome back. Chris Carter and Christine Leahy back with us. Let's move to the Patriots, who reportedly have removed running back Joe Mixon from their draft board over concerns about his 2014 arrest for assaulting a woman in a restaurant. Patriots owner Bob Kraft says he believes in second chances, but also believes, quote, playing in the NFL is a privilege, and that privilege is lost for men who have a history of abusing women. Colin, what's your reaction to the report?
A little bit of a PR move. Tell me a time that we've ever had the Patriots telegraph what they're going to do with personnel. And this just leaked out to two sources. Hell, they don't have a draft pick in the first 3 rounds. Mixon's gone. This is one. Let's be honest about this. As you say, let's keep it 100.
Yes.
We don't have a chance to get him, so we are standing strong. Nothing gets out in New England. I got 2 sources coming out on this thing.
But even if it is a PR move, I don't have a problem with it. Good. Set a good example for the league. You're the reigning champions. Say that you're not going to accept domestic violence anymore, and that's fine. Yeah. And I've said repeatedly, I don't have a problem with Joe Mixon ever playing again. I just need him to go through some protocol and, most importantly, take full responsibility for what he did so that you're sure it's not going to happen again.
Okay.
I always think about the woman in this position who was abused. And I think she's sitting there looking at this guy making money, going through the draft, no problem, no consequences, where she's all alone at home as a victim.
Again, someone that has a first-round draft pick making this statement, or even a second-round draft pick making this statement, actually means something to me.
Yeah.
Bob Kraft needs to be careful here. again, he's got to remember who he is and who his friends are. He has stood by Donald Trump. There will be those on the left who will pounce and say, oh, you can be president and grab him by the you-know-what, but Joe Mixon can't play for your football team.
Right.
You can sign Albert Hainsworth when he had sexual assault allegations over him.
Peter.
You can. His wife made him get rid of Christian Peter years ago. You can. Aaron Hernandez was involved in a murder investigation or shooting investigation in Florida when he was a college player, but you drafted him and you rode with him until his murderous spree got...
But they claimed that they didn't know that.
That they didn't know anything about. So it just rings... And I like Bob Kraft, but this rings hollow in this era of virtue signaling. Everybody's looking for their chance to say, look, I'm the good guy.
Right.
Just be the good guy.
Well, the thing, it's always the right time to do the right thing. So I'm not going to applaud someone for doing what they should be doing anyway, but he shouldn't have singled it out to domestic violence. He should have said, based on the way we've looked at players and we've made some mistakes in the past, at least acknowledge your checkered past as far as taking players.
Corey Dillon, yeah.
And, like, say, as far as whatever they've done, don't specifically say just domestic violence because you're only singling out a certain group of players. Like, they should look at all players, especially violent crimes, women, elderly,
Stallworth
and
was
our
involved
pets.
in vehicle manslaughter.
Right.
Drunk driving that killed somebody. Ended up on their roster.
And it just smells awful fishy. You don't have a top pick. So it's no big deal, like you're making a stand when he's not going to be available for you to draft him anyway.
Right, but let's hope that they learned their lesson. I have no problem with them setting an example, and if this causes one more owner or GM to say, we're not going to do this either, great. That's a win.
You know, it really is interesting. This league does so many things right. Boy, they're bad at this. Like somebody's going to draft Joe Mixon. Like the Greg Hardy situation. Like the NFL, when it comes to domestic violence, man, they send a lot of messages. This is their blind spot.
They're upset guys for twerking in the middle of a game, but they're going to allow someone who hits a woman to play.
False equivalence. Listen.
It's not. It's you're worried about the integrity of the game, and that's what they're saying.
Yeah, but that's violence to beating somebody and twerking.
You can't compare it at all. I'm just saying you cannot say that you're caring about the integrity of the game with that while you're meanwhile allowing all these types of men to be on your field.
Listen, Bob Kraft, to me, take Clark Hunt. Very good guy, know him, owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. They drafted Tyreek Hill and had a lot of success with him. Bob Kraft has now basically put a bad light on the Chiefs organization. We're above them. This is why people don't like the Patriots. And I try to like the Patriots, but they try to hold themselves up there like they're so much better than everybody else when the record is clear. Aaron Hernandez is sitting in jail for murder right now, was a dog that people in that locker room were afraid of, intimidated by. It was no secret who he was. Until he got arrested, they supported this guy to the very end. Again, Corey Dillon has sexual assault issues. Albert Hainsworth, Dante Stallworth, vehicular manslaughter. Listen, again, this domestic violence issue is serious, and the league and the society needs to deal with it in a serious manner. All of this virtue signaling and gestures, again, when you're not in the first 2 rounds of the draft, it just rings hollow and fake to me. And again,
so they shouldn't even say it.
Not them.
Why?
Let a real owner.
To me, it's so.
Does it hold anything that they're the reigning champions? They're respectable.
Okay, but when you're reigning champions
owner.
5 times, why don't you do this every year? It's just the year you don't have a first, second.
Because this is a big topic of discussion this year.
But they're also a team that gives you no information. So now all of a sudden we're going to comply.
Suddenly stuff leaks out to make us look great.
Maybe they've had a really great positive.
I don't buy it at all.
I think we all agree with you in spirit, and I think we all feel like we have to address this issue in a real way.
I will never fault someone for saying I'm not going to put up with domestic violence.
I'm not faulting them, but I'm not faulting them, but I'm also not buying them. I'm not faulting them.
You know what?
Even if it's fake, though, I like it.
You know what? If the Grand Wizard of the KKK came out and said, you know what? I love black people. I'm not buying it just because he said it. And it's not a positive just because he said it. And that's Bob Kraft and the Patriots are hypocrites here.
I'm telling you, you're hell with my hat on.
All right, welcome back. Chris Carter, Hall of Famer, joined now by former founder of the big league, Jason McIntyre. Let's go to some troubling news from the NCAA tournament where an official, just a ref from Kentucky's Elite Eight loss to Carolina, has received a flood of death threats and other hostile messages from Wildcat fans via social media. Kentucky coach John Calipari called out the refs after the loss, but responded to the threats today. This is his tweet, quote, "I always brag we have the classiest fans in the country. Let's make sure we remain that way after a tough loss." Whitlock, did Calipari need to say more to denounce Kentucky fans?
Yeah, not just did he probably need to say more, you know, being the classiest after a loss starts with the head coach. And the head coach whined about the officiating and taking his young players out of the game in the first half when he had the option to play them with 2 fouls. So their lack of class started with Calipari whining about the refs.
This is a teaching moment. Like, if you built a business, you know, you can get some of the marketing down and some of the distribution, but sometimes, no matter how smart you are, stuff happens you're not prepared for. This is a teaching moment. Calipari's a smart guy, complains a little about the officials, probably didn't think anything of it. It was one of 50 questions. And then the Looney Tune fringe of a fan base, and they all have them, right, starts doing death threats, and Calipari's probably about the next day going, the hell? John will never do it again. It's a teaching moment, but coaches from high school to college, AAU to the NFL, when mentoring young people, have to cool heated situations, not ignite them. And I think John knows it. He learned it. It's a teaching lesson for all coaches.
I don't know. I kind of think the opposite. I would not have tweeted anything if I were Calipari. Just let it go. I mean, you're now saying I draw the line at death threats. Okay, that's when I got to jump in and get the fan base to settle down. I don't think he should have said anything. Like you said, this is the lunatic fringe. Chris, you know Calipari well. I think we're going to go to his basketball camp this summer, right?
We're going to get you an invite. But Coach Cal did do the right thing because he's the face of the program. Yeah. He's the voice of Kentucky basketball and Kentucky. So he needed to say something because the situation's out of hand. But this is where I disagree with Coach Cal because it's a teachable moment. But when those kids got 2 fouls, he should have sat them on the bench, but he should have played them in the first half. The reason why, too, is because you're one of the few people that know that Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox, they're not coming back. This is their last game. So why are you sitting them on the bench, sitting there trying to teach them something, trying to play out of control when you should have maybe at 8 minutes or 5 minutes into left in the first half, play them. Try to get down to 2 minutes to keep the game close because you know those 2 kids and a couple other kids, they're not going to play anymore. So I believe he should have had to tweet because he's the voice and the face, and it will help calm things down for Kentucky. But I come from Ohio State. So I know, man, when it goes against us, yes, we have fans, and they're the ugly side of being part of a huge fan base and the fandom. There's an ugly part to that. And so I accept that with being an Ohio State fan.
And the class of Michigan fans didn't threaten the refs after the Ohio State stole that football game this year. But I want to be clear. I think death threats is a good place to draw a line in the sand. And so I do think Calipari had to come out and say something. He probably should have said something a bit stronger. John Higgins is the guy facing the threats because, again, he has no choice because if someone does something to John Higgins, again, probably weren't going to kill him. But if they vandalize his house, vandalize his car,
property.
That
sticks to Calipari forever.
Yeah, so he had to say something. He probably should have mentioned John Higgins.
But the refs weren't bad in the game.
They weren't.
If you look at the foul call,
they were a little dicey.
Listen,
I
broke it down today. I broke it down today. If you go look at all the power stats.
Yes.
Carolina dominated. Translation. Bigger, stronger teams pounded inside. Kentucky's a perimeter team.
Yeah. How many more fouls they call on Kentucky? How many more?
1, yeah.
Oh, no.
But let's remember, last thing, the BBN, that fan base, they're like the Beehive, Beyonce's fans online. If you say anything critical, they're coming after you. They're swarming. They're dangerous. They're a rowdy group.
All right, well, despite this Kentucky mess, the tournament has largely been devoid of controversy. And TNT's Ernie Johnson says that it's such a good thing for our country because it brings people together at a time when everybody is so stinking confrontational. Colin, has the tourney succeeded because it's avoided confrontational political issues?
Okay, and I try to keep my politics out of sports, but every morning I have a meeting before our radio show. I've been on this thing for 2 weeks. So think about this. The ratings are up almost 40%. All the powers are out. Indiana didn't make it. Syracuse didn't make it. UConn didn't make it. Ohio State didn't make it. Duke was out in the game. Louisville's out in the game. Notre Dame's out. And the ratings are up 40%? That's a referendum. We know empirically that there's like 12 colleges in football and basketball. Buckeyes, Michigan in football, Texas, USC, ratings go up. We know in basketball, one big dog is left at the end.
Right.
So that is telling you the country's basketball fans have made a choice. NBA ratings with better players down 20%, college basketball up 35%. That's more than just, hey, I like Xavier. There's something going on here.
I think Ernie has hit it on the head. I think you have hit it on the head in terms of, like, you can turn on a college basketball game, the tournament at this point, and know everything's going to feel good. You're not going to feel uncomfortable.
It's joyful.
There's not anything that's going to happen that's going to cause you to fall into deeper thought about the rest of society. You're just going to watch a basketball game, and people are looking for a place to have that feeling again, and that's what sports has always promised, and this tournament has delivered.
Go ahead, Chris.
It's part of America, though. I mean, we've gotten away from the politics, which is part of America, but the NCAA tournament is a huge part of America, and we don't have to get our politics mixed up in watching kids who we don't know. Colleges, we don't know. We don't know the chemistry. We don't know who's winning. We don't know who's on a hot streak. We know the blue bloods, but we're looking for the excitement of the tournament, and we like the thrill of the upset. So we kind of cheering for the underdog in the midst of all these other things.
Can I throw one other thing out there that it's a belief? College kids are not great at the three-point shot. Professionals at the highest level have gotten so good at it that the NBA games now, you turn on NBA games, there are blowouts everywhere. This tournament, because of the one-and-dones going to the basketball factories,
right.
Kentucky's not as dominant as they used to be, and Gonzaga's got juniors. The college game is now full of close games. I turn on
But
TV.
aesthetically, it's not that pretty.
No, it's not.
The NBA is a much better product. There's no doubt about it.
It's a better product, but when you watch, I watched Houston and Golden State last night. That's not a good game to watch.
The competition is
absolutely. So you're right about the
competition is better, as Colin's point.
And I opened my radio show with this 2 weeks ago. I sat there and watched the first 2 days of the tournament. I didn't see one mention of Donald Trump or wiretapping or Congress or impeachment, none of that. And as a sports fan, that's what I want. I can get my news on the side. I can get my politics on the side. But when I'm watching a game, Chris, I want sports. I like to stick to sports. This is the Speak for Yourself podcast featuring the best of Colin Cowherd and Jason Whitlock. I'm your host, Jason McIntyre. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Catch the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and you know we're on Twitter because, yes, we see all your tweets. Speaking of Twitter, I had a good debate with Darren Rovell on my radio show about whether or not the general public would pay for Twitter because it looks like it's going to become a pay service pretty soon. Twitter's hemorrhaging money. They need money badly, so they figure, hey, we've got all these users. We could charge people X amount per year, 100, 200. We know the media obviously would pay the money, but is the general public going to pay? And I say no, because the older audience will just go to Facebook and get their news from there. The younger audience will get their news from Snapchat and Instagram. I don't really think there's a huge market of people willing to pay for Twitter. Seriously, once the news is out, once the news is broken on Tony Romo, it's going to be on the radio within 3 minutes. It's going to be on TV within 2 minutes. It's going to be on Facebook. It's going to be everywhere. There's really no value in Twitter unless you feel like, oh man, I really need to be the first one to find out. And frankly, in 2017, everybody's connected all the time. I don't think first means anything. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.